Welcome to Changing Suits. We're your hosts, Val
and Taj, discussing the latest news, views, and general life for us Western Asians.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, changing_suits, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Hi, welcome to Changing Suits. My name's Val.
And my name's Taj.
Today, we are going to be introducing you to our first guest of 2022.
Woohoo!
Yes. And we are honoured because we have got Harjap Bhangal here with us. And I did use my Asian accent there because I don't know how to say it in any other way.
Yeah. Well, the Gore say Bangle.
Is it Bangle? I wasn't sure what you wanted to go.
Yeah, so whatever floats your boat.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Harjap is joining us today to really talk about his background as an immigration solicitor. And also, we're going to be touching on quite a few topics today because you are very vocal on social media. And we do love your social media. We look forward to it.
Yeah, I get in trouble for it sometimes, but yeah,
I follow you through everything, and I think I probably know a lot about you. So I was so happy to have you as our guest speaker.
Yeah, okay. As long as you don't work for the police, I'm all right.
I don't think
no,
so.
you don't.
So just as an introduction, Harjap, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, first of all, I'm honoured to be your first guest of 2022. So that's really honoured to do that. And about myself, well, born and bred in Essex, so grew up in a small bend there called Rainham, and that's next to Dagenham, Romford, Tilbury, Grays. So Barking sort of comes a little bit further down, but when it's predominantly white areas. So born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s. I went to a school in Upminster where no Asians used to live then, but now a lot of Asians have moved out too. Mm-hmm. And in my whole secondary school, there was only 2 Asians, and I was one of them, and the other was a Patel. And they had a shop, and they had about 5 or 6 brothers and sisters, so that didn't help the stereotype. So yeah, I was all like, so the first thing I was asked when I went into a school of white kids was, do you own a corner shop? And I was like,
of course.
No. And I was like, what does your dad do? He's a builder. That's not really Asian, is it? And I said, well, give it 20 years. All Asians will be builders. But
and then voila, they really are.
They are. So and then, I grew up there. In Rainham, there was only about 20, 30 Asian families. And about half of them were from the same bend. And they had the same surname. So they were a little close-knit. But, for us, life was like, if we wanted to get an atte da bura, or like some mircha, adrak, lasan and all of that, or some, what do I call it, curry powder, all of that sort of stuff, turmeric and haldi and all that, we couldn't get it locally. So we had to go to Ilford.
I was going to say, Ilford's not too far, don't worry.
But I was going to say, this sounds like Swindon not too many years ago.
Yeah.
So we have to go to South also. Yeah. But it's getting better.
No, you must have a few Indian shops there.
We do now, but very far and few.
So yeah, if we didn't have any. So then we had to go all the way up there to get that sort of stuff. And that's the only sort of place I'd see Asians really, apart from the families and all of that. Which sort of is surprising because, I would say I grew up very dissy and my language skills are very good being born here. And I think that's due to the fact partly that I spent a lot of time with my mum and her friends who used to come over. So I never had any sisters. So I used to end up making tea and like serving, when you put the mattiyan out and the laddus out. And
there's nothing wrong with doing that.
No, nothing. I was that sister. So I was my own sister.
You're one of the sisters. We like that.
I was my mum's daughter and I was my mum's son as well. So
just out of interest, how did you find that? Because as soon as you've said that, all of us have gone to the stereotypical, a boy was doing it. How did you find that in the fact that you didn't have a sister and the fact that you were doing those things that, especially in those days, was stereotypically done by females?
Well, because I didn't have a sister, I didn't know any better. So I just thought that everyone did it. But to be honest, it was just me helping my mum. My mum had a bad back. But me, it was just doing that. And it's just something I had to do. So Saturdays was Hoover Day and cleaning the windows. That's what I got. And if I did that, so I used to get up 8 o'clock, get that done by about 12. And then I was allowed to go Upton Park to buy my tapes and my videos, and because I grew up on Hindi films and Punjabi songs, and like the only place we could get them was on Green Street, Upton Park. So Saturday was my day when I would leg it down there and get it. And because my school was 5 miles away from my home, the only way I used to go to school was catch a bus and catch a train underground. So it used to take me about an hour and a half to get to school and
God.
come back. And so I used to leave home at 7:30 in the morning and didn't get back till 5 o'clock. From that was a school day. And when I look back, that's longer than my working day now. So my school, so I was very train savvy, very bus savvy by the age of about 11, 12. So I knew my way around. And, for that sort of 11 and 12-year-olds getting on a train and a bus on their own, sort of almost unheard of now. I wouldn't let my daughter, I wouldn't feel comfortable with her doing that now, even though she doesn't live too far from the school. That was it really then. And as a career choice, I didn't really have a choice. My dad was always like, no one had a degree in my family. My mama did. He was a teacher. But no one else had a degree. So everyone else was 8th standard, which is like well below GCSE. So for my dad, it was like, I didn't even know what a vakil was. And I just became one really. If everyone says, why did you become a lawyer? And I just say the truth because my dad told me to. And,
Quite a lot of us say that, yeah.
Yeah. So then I just became went to uni, did law, and uni was where it all changed. Because up until 18, in an educational establishment, I'd only seen Gore. I'd only seen Gore, and I hadn't seen any British Asians.
On that point, just before you go talk about your uni life,
Yeah, go on.
how did you find it? Because you've said at school there was only 2 Asians.
There's only 2 of us, yeah.
How did you find that? Did you go through any racism at that point?
Pretty much, yeah. And I even now I look back on it, and I think that was out of order because I was called the P word every day, if we're allowed to say it. I was told to go back home. Yeah. I was told your dad owns a corner shop. You should have 5 or 6 brothers and sisters. No one knew my culture. No one knew my background. The only bit of breaking point about our culture for me happened a big breakthrough. And this is going to sound weird and sound like stupid, yeah? But when Apache Indian got into the charts with Boom Shakalaka, then all my Gore were like, oh, he says the word Punjabi, you're one of them, aren't you? And I said, yeah, he's one of our lot. And I felt so proud that someone Asian and was using Punjabi words in a song had sort of got into the charts and his song was being sung. But otherwise, I just, like I grew up listening to Kishore Kumar, Muhammad Rafi, and Kumar Sanu later on, watching Mithun films and Amitabh Bachchan, Jatinder and all that. I couldn't talk about that with Gore. So I didn't know, they didn't know what was going on then.
It's so interesting, actually. I think now we sort of lose, the importance sometimes of how important role models are. And especially at a time where you were surrounded by people that weren't Asian.
Yeah.
How much of a big influence it had. And I was going to say, I thought you were going to say, goodness gracious me, at that point. I think that's slightly further. And
I think that's further down the line, yeah.
But it's the same sort of thing. It's the role models, the things that you see on TV.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. And at that point, then I looked at these people and I thought, these are mere apneya. If I chat to them and spoke to them in the Asian language, they know. And a lot of things on goodness gracious me, we all identified with because we went through it, right? If you grew up in Asian areas, you grew up with Asian kids in school. I didn't. So I was the Asian kid in my school. So for us, it was very difficult. I mean, I've got friends in Southall and Birmingham, and my wife's from Handsworth, in Birmingham. When I asked her, I said, what was your classes like? And like her best friends are all Asian, all her schoolmates. And I'm like, I ain't got any Asian schoolmate. And they were like, no, we didn't really have a lot of Gaudi in our class. And I thought, God, if I'd have grown up in them areas, would my life have been different? Would I have been different? I often sit back there and think that. And but I'm glad I had sort of that upbringing with a lot of different sort of people, because then it just allows me now in any sort of atmosphere, I can mix it up. I can be white British, I can be British Asian, I can be desi with the auntie. I can sit down with the uncles, I can play around with the kids and muck around with them. So really, I span across all sort of generations, and I can do that, and that sort of helped me in my career, helped me with my TV stuff, but more importantly, just helped me with my analysis on my own community that I do. Like yourselves, I study a lot of people.
And do you think that the discrimination that you faced when you were younger has impacted you now or influenced any of the decisions that you've made in life?
Yeah, 100%. I would say a lot of what I'm vocal about, I'm very anti-British Empire. The British Empire was a genocidal regime.
Mm.
Yeah? It killed millions of people worldwide, including putting them in front of cannons and blasting them. And those people that were put in front of the cannons, they were our ancestors. And you've seen a recent Shahid Udham Singh film, right?
Yep.
Right. If you watch that and you still think the British Empire was a good thing, then they basically murdered all our ancestors to control land, looted our countries and our ancestors, raped and pillaged, all in the name of advancement and civilization.
Mm.
Yeah, and then they killed my heroes, which were Shahid Udham Singh and Shahid Bhagat Singh. So I'm from Nawashad, which has been renamed Shahid Bhagat Singh Nagar.
Yeah.
But they killed it, and for me, I'm very anti-British Empire. There should be no such thing. There should be no celebration of a British Empire. There shouldn't be awards given out in the name of it.
Yeah.
And upon who accept it, that's their own decision. But if I was to be given an award by the British government for my hard work, yeah, which is a good thing, it shouldn't be in the name of a genocidal regime, right? Yeah, there shouldn't be such a thing as the Hitler Award for leadership, right? How would you feel? The only way we can accept an award from the government at the top level is if we have to become a member of the British Empire, because that's what MBE stands for, or a member of the Order of the British Empire. Well, first of all, so that really sort of affected me, that in relation to the racism that I received, but also the fact that when I was receiving racism, not a lot of people stood up for me. So everyone would join in. I had a racist neighbor about 2 doors away. I'm sure everyone who lived in white areas probably had a racist neighbor. That guy used to threaten me. He used to stand outside with his mates. Once he showed me a knife, and it was racist. I hope he's got better. I'll be honest. Once I heard he had a car accident, and I thought couldn't happen to a nicer person, and I had a laugh at it. But yeah, so for me, yeah, it does. It did mold my life, and it does impact a lot of it at the moment. I can't stand racism. I'm very anti-casteism, so I'm very about that. I'm very anti about. I wasn't anti-casteism, so I was in my uni days, and I'll go into that. I got caught up in the whole euphoria, but lucky I left all of that there. But now I just see anything that's divisive, whether it's race, caste, gender. I'm just anti that, really.
I was going to say, I mean, one of the things that a big part of what you've said is about the racism, and this is something that we're going to touch on a bit later in regards to one of the bills that is coming out later on and going through the House of Lords at the end of the month.
Yeah.
We'll discuss that in a little while because it's all going to loop around. I just wanted to talk about the fact that touch on your university life, because the other thing is obviously you've got kids of your own, and one thing you said was your dad did sort of push you to become a solicitor. One of the questions that we've sort of explored on one of our podcasts is, would you then get your children to do those stereotypical career paths of, solicitor, business, medicine, or what's your view on that side of it, now being a father yourself?
Right. You know what? With us, right, we are this generation which is sort of lost in between the hardcore dissies who we don't want to become because that's the way we were brought up. Yeah. And we can't let go of our sort of upbringing either and become total westernized either, because that's not us either, because it took 25 odd years to instill that Disneyism in us, and it's not going to go out in 25 seconds or minutes. So we're this generation who are stuck here, yeah? Like, and mum and dad are the first generation migrants, the second generation, so that are born here, right? And I find myself saying stuff which my dad was probably thinking, and you've probably, like, I know for a fact that you've both probably sat there and like said something, and then about 5 minutes later thought, oh my God, what have I just said? And I promised I'd never say that to my kids. And then you're thinking, right, we've got too much upgrade to apologize to our kids. What for? sorry for, but we just tell ourselves off and say, all right, don't say that again. And
But it's interesting because we discussed this previously on a podcast, and this is exactly the conversation we had. And we sort of came to the conclusion of the fact that we all go through stages. And what our parents were saying wasn't wrong at that point. We've just hit that stage and have come to an understanding of this is why they were saying it. That was the conclusion we sort of came to at one of the podcasts.
I'm not sure whether what they were saying wasn't wrong. I mean, there's stuff that's wrong and right. So I remember tables, conversations in our house, and now I'd sit back and I'd say that was definitely wrong. Yeah. So some of our parents' view on caste might be wrong, right? And we probably had that conversation, and all of that. You have to get married within this caste, and you have to do that. And let's not pretend it's not a conversation that's not done in houses. It's done, yeah, and it happens now as well, yeah. And women's role. Like, okay, so when a girl comes into a house, this is what she needs to do. Yeah. And my son, he tall te baith ke sona, he poos it out, gold, yeah. ਇਹਦੇ ਤਾਂ ਕੁਛ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਲੋਲਾ ਹੋਵੇ, uneducated howe, yeah, and useless and lazy, and he doesn't even know how to sign his own name. And then you've got this girl who's an MA graduate from India, yeah, but no, she's nothing in comparison. And then our derogatory views from people about India. We talk about racism, and then when obviously when you grow up, you begin to realize actually our community is probably one of the racist ever. Are we racist against black people? Damn right we are, yeah? From a young age, we're told to avoid them, don't make friends. That's what I was, and whether you want to admit it or not, but, a lot of people listening here, that's what we were told, whether people admit it or not. We were told that Joria, Ilardea, and they do this. And how stereotypical is that? And, and when and I'm sure it's probably the same, that's how white people were taught as well. But when I look at that now, and I think that has got to change. Yeah, that has got to change in us. That was wrong. Our views on women were totally wrong. Our views on even poor people. We become such snobs at times with all of this. We don't want to live in a poor area anymore. So look, we came as a generation of migrants, yeah, to Southall. Yeah, everyone comes to Southall initially, right? Took over.
I was going to say, or near enough to Green Street.
Yeah, right. The Chark jere gore si o pajate. Yeah. Imagine how the Gore must feel when they had an influx of Asians and they took over the town, right? Then we now complain that it's a dive, there's drug abuse, alcohol abuse, sexual abuse. It's unsafe for women to walk down the road. Yeah. There's beatings, there's stabbings. Well, who's doing all of that? It isn't the Gore. We have turned that into the dive that people allege that it is, yeah? And then what do we do when we get a bit of money? I'm moving out to Garrett's Cross. I'm going to Ivor and Langley, yeah? I'm going to move out to Chiswick. Yeah, I'm going Richmond. We don't sit there and think, ਆਪਾਂ ਇਹ ਗੰਦ ਪਾਇਆ, ਇਹਨੂੰ ਆਪਾਂ ਹੀ ਸਾਫ਼ ਕਰੀਏ। ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਬੈਕ ਗਾਰਡਨ 'ਚ ਗੰਦ ਪਿਆ ਆ, ਗੁਆਂਢੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਤਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਆ ਕੇ ਸਾਫ਼ ਕਰਨਾ। But what we do is say, ਗੰਦ ਪੈ ਗਿਆ, ਹੁਣ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਸਾਫ਼ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਨਾ, ਆਪਾਂ ਘਰੇ ਹੀ ਛੱਡ ਦੇਣਾ, and let someone else move in. And then we look down on them people. ਅੱਛਾ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪੁਰਾਣੇ ਸੌਥਾਲ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ, ਉੱਥੇ ਤਾਂ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਏਦਾਂ ਗੰਦ ਬਹੁਤ ਆ, ਹੈ ਨਾ? But it's like, well, hold on, mate, you're the ones who put it there before you moved out to Garrett's Cross and places like that. And the same thing happens in Birmingham. Everyone comes to Handsworth and Smethwick, and then they move out. Solihull chaliye, है ना? Four Oaks chaliye, apa Sutton chaliye, है ना? And Solihull people don't even like being told they're part of Birmingham. So even they've got a Birmingham postcode and a phone number, they'll be like, "Apa Solihull रहने हैं, Birmingham नहीं." I mean, ਤੁਹਾਡਾ postcode ਤਾਂ B ਨਾਲ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੁੰਦਾ, ਤੁਹਾਡਾ phone number 0121 ਨਾਲ ਨਹੀਂ, ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਚਲੋ ਐਵੇਂ ਆ, ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਮਾੜੇ ਜਿਹਾ ਆਪਾਂ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਲੱਗ ਗਏ ਆ, yeah, right. So it's like the same sort.
I was going to say, is that the gossip that happens in Solihull? Because I had no idea.
Yeah, you tell a Solihull person they come from Birmingham, they'll be like, that's the best way to get them to stop talking to you.
I'll bear that in mind.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues in my own community. Yeah.
For Your Inspiration is a network created to help women return to work following long-term leave, or for women who are at work but are facing challenges.
At FYI, we are working to break down barriers such as mental health, discrimination, and gaps in skills which prevent women from returning to a career that they are happy in.
Through our peer-to-peer support groups and workshops, we aim to create an environment where women can gain confidence, share their experiences, and build strong relationships to positively benefit the individual, their employers, and their communities.
FYI for your inspiration. We're talking about what happened with our parents and how they brought us up. How are we going to make that change with our kids now that we've got kids? Are we going to teach them about racism? And how are we going to go about teaching about racism? Are we going to talk? Because with my daughter, I've mentioned this before, she, for some funny reason, or maybe good reason, she doesn't recognize color. So when I say to her, oh, that's a white person, she's like, but mum, they're not white. I'm like, okay, I just leave it there. So I haven't really touched on race. How are you bringing up your children, and are you teaching them about racism and colour?
Well, I teach them from my perspective of what I think is right and wrong in today's age. Anything that happened to me or what I went through, I don't need to unload that trauma or the remnants of that trauma onto my kids. That's my issue with my parents and my community. And it's not just my parents, it's everyone's parents, and it's the whole community as a whole, as to what we were taught. So I will hope to try and be more inclusive as opposed to exclusive. And I think that's the key in relation to that. I won't say, I don't know if I'm going to be successful or not, but I'm definitely not going to sit there and say, right, aa bande galte hai kyunki inna da rang different hai, hai na? Ya aa bande sab to lower hai kyunki inna de daddies used to do a different job back home. Yeah. Ya aa people poor area ch rehinde, that means they're worse than us, and appa rich bande hain. Yeah. So I'm definitely not going to go down that sort of road. Yeah.
But just on that point, I mean, it's really interesting because, again, this is a conversation we've had previously. I think the tough thing is, especially when we come to our parents, they were the first generation. The first thing they had to do was make money so that we could live like we are living.
Yeah.
And the tough thing that I found, and something that's really revealing through these podcasts that we're doing, is I feel like sometimes we blame them for certain things that they have done. However, that was what they knew, and they didn't have the time where they could reflect like we do, like we're lucky enough to do, like we're happy, we're doing a podcast, which is fantastic. They would never have had the time.
You have hit the nail on the head, right? So they didn't know any better. Yeah. So the first instinct of theirs is we want to protect our kids, and we want the best for them, which is not a bad instinct. Yeah. But what happens is they didn't have the growth, like mind-wise, because they didn't have an education. My parents didn't, right? They lacked that. Yeah. A lot of people might have had educated parents, and they were brought up a lot differently. But we're talking about, in my mind, we're talking about Bendu parents, not been to college, not been to uni, just flunked out of school. Mum sat at home my whole life, and dad was just doing what he was doing. Yeah. So that sort of thing, it's for that. I don't blame them. Yeah, I don't blame them. So I think we don't want to parent bash. Yeah. So I think you've got a brilliant point there. We shouldn't blame them. But what it is now, it's on us now that we have got that education, because rich or poor, it doesn't matter whether your mum and dad came here and were cleaners or on a sewing machine like my mum, or were a builder like my dad, or they won a lottery. The one thing our parents all managed to get was an education, hopefully. They gave us a freedom to do that. So now it's up to us to expand on that. So obviously we take the good thing of our parents and pass that on. And this is why I say we're that lost generation. That we got to take the good things of that and balance it with the bad things of that. We've got to now tell our kids, okay, you don't go making friends with people who are going to stab people or gangs and a problem like this, without being stereotypical or racist at the same time. To go back to the original question, how are we going to do that? I think that's going to come one over time. And that's going to come once we ourselves wean ourselves out of that slowly. And we've got to educate them. I always say one thing, it's become my catchphrase. It doesn't matter what the question is, the answer is always education. And that's the key. We've got to educate and make sure they understand what's the difference between right and wrong, whilst being protected, at the same time staying safe, at the same time not being taken for a ride, not being duped, not being taken advantage of. And it's such a fine balancing game to play. I sometimes, like I was going to say, and you sometimes find stuff saying that perhaps is a one-liner from our parents, and we've probably heard it. And then you sit there thinking, oh my God, did I say that? I'm turning into my dad. Like I'm becoming my dad, or I'm becoming my mum. Like, what's happening here? Is this the genes overtaking? Like, and I promised I would never do that. I was sitting here once the other day, and I was just thinking, oh, of course you could become a solicitor, yeah. Then she could I could retire. She could take over the office, and she'd have a ready set up office to work from. She'd get it quite quickly.
We plan their lives, don't we?
She'd get it into a job, right? She'd get it in. She'd walk into a job. She'd have it easy, like daddy's all set up, and daddy's got the office here and everything like that. And I thought, what a head start that would give her. And then I just sat back for like 3 or 4 minutes, and I thought, your dad pushed you to become this. Why am I even thinking about pushing? Because if she said she wants to be a singer, and she said she wants to be an actor or something, then why can't I just be happy for her and say, okay, go and do that? Why, why am I going to think, buddy actor banna tu chup karke law pad kyun nahi jaake, buddy I gone. Have you heard your voice? Like, all these thoughts, and I hear myself saying, but I can't say it. But she's quite strong-willed, so she gives it back, which is a good thing, I suppose. Then I thought, well, your dad forced you to be a solicitor. That hasn't worked out bad for you. You could have been a builder, like your dad, Anna, or you could have been on a production line at Ford's, like the rest of the ethnic minorities were in Dagenham. So your dad made a decision for you. That wasn't bad. So I'm like, yeah, so maybe parents do know best. So if I do sort of impose a little bit...
how the tables have turned, and all of a sudden the parents know exactly what they're doing.
I'm so glad I'm talking about this now, because I can get it off my chest.
Don't worry, we're like a therapy session.
I'm telling you, this is very therapeutic. I can
you mentioned about caste. So when you were going through the process of finding someone to get married, let's start off from that. Actually,
oh man,
how did you get married? Was it a love marriage? Was it arranged marriage?
Love marriage? What's one of those?
Exactly. So was it arranged? And what does arranged mean?
I've been married nearly 20 years, and I just don't need love her.
Your wife will be listening to this. She will be distraught that you just said that.
So I had this stereotypical view of like when you're a lad at uni, Hannah, and then you think, right, if you're and be married by the time I was 25. By the time I was 28, I wanted like 2 or 3 kids. Then I wanted to retire. And they do say that if you want to make God laugh, then tell him your plans. And so God must have laughed at my plans. Yeah. It took me 5 years to get married the arranged marriage way. I hold the world record. I saw 88 girls before I got married. I saw 4 on a weekend, on a Saturday, Friday,
one after the other,
and 2 sisters at the same time. And I still
how can you do that? That's out of order.
Listen, don't talk to me. It was their dad who brought them along. So these 2 girls walked in, and they had mobile phones in their hand. So this is like a good 20, 21 years ago, yeah? I had a mobile phone in there. So as soon as they walked in, and the banta punta pañana, they're not like in suits. So yeah, stereotype. We're expecting a girl there to be in a suit.
Yeah.
That's something like when you go and see a prospective boy, and the boy's got to wear a suit. We didn't have Facebook, WhatsApp, to check people out beforehand. We had this Rishte Ali photo, yeah? And and if someone's listening to this, can you send that back to me? Only copy.
You don't need the photo back.
Bande chalk hunde studio ch aake khichai se green street te Upton Park ch. So you had your photo, right?
Someone's still looking at that photo.
Listen, it's got to the stage now where I go to weddings, yeah, and I see people, and I sit next to my dad, and I said, Dad, oh banda dekhya lagda tam Jeta. And he sits and he goes, Jeta, I see all the kudi dekhan gaye.
No, that's really bad.
And what would happen is, that's how many I saw. So now I was recently hosting the Sherry Marn concert, and I met one there. And she goes, don't you remember you came to see me? And I said, yeah, I do. I sort of bachan, and I felt like really bad for saying, but I thought I recognised the nose. But
you can't say that.
Yeah, but that's what, but I said yes to her. And she said no to me.
Oh, that's all right.
That's okay.
I said no to her.
Okay.
So I asked her, I said yes to you. And she goes, yeah. And I said, why did you say no to me?
Why would you ask that?
I asked her, why not? I'm not going to marry her now. So I And I said, why did you say no to me? She goes, no, your views were a bit like hardcore. And I said, yeah, I just come out of uni. You had desi views. And I said, well, I'm still that. But she goes, oh, you've turned out to be a totally different person from when I was there, and you've changed now. Oh, it's too late now, love. I've got to go back to the missus. You know what I mean?
I've got kids.
Yeah. And I said, Tera kiddan? She goes, oh, I'm divorced. And I said, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. But
Shouldn't have said no to me.
I said, there's a generation of mums out there telling their girls, तू ऐश करना सी देखा हरजाप टीवी ते आंदा रेंज रोवरां च घुमदा तू ऐश करना सी दादे मंगाउणी है ना करती तो ओनू तेरी तो किस्मत ही खराब है दादे मंगाउणी तेरी किस्मत ही खराब वकील बंदा सी देखा टीवी ते रेडियो ते सारे पासे फिल्मां करदा जिमी शेरगिल ना तू घर बैठी आ अच्छा all them aunties thank you for having my back.
Just to let the listeners of this podcast know, we are sitting here laughing our heads off whilst you're telling your stories.
It's true, and you know me, I very rarely lie, so all I've got to tell are true stories about my experience. But yeah, and so this was the procedure. Yeah, you saw a photo, you stopped photos. Yeah, and photo we या तो किसी रिश्तेदार दे हाथों दी सी, या it used to come in a lifafa in your home address by post. Yeah, so you get the photo, you'd look at her, and then you'd think, right, I've got to make a judgment, and then the bajola would tell you, now it's all the opposite. Now people have a love marriage and they have to rent a bajola out.
It's true.
And in some cases, I swear to God, I've been asked about 4 times, will you be our bajola? And I said, I don't even know either of you. And I said, how did you meet? And he goes, no, I've been going out of her for like 5 years. And I said, what are you going to say? That we'll just say, yeah, you know her, he know her, and you can just like meet our mums and say, look, I've watch your show and all that. And I said, what about if it don't work out then? And the family juttiyan pauniyan tusi. I said, I don't even know you.
It's fine, you're a solicitor, you can sort out the divorce.
So what, random people come? Your client? Are you saying your clients are saying this?
No,
or just random.
Facebook.
Oh.
Yeah, who are forced to watch the show on a Friday, just probably like you lot are by your parents when you can't get the remote control off them between 7 and 8. program आया हुन नहीं हुन आपा बस देखो बोलियो ना जे बोलियो ना देखी चुप करके तू ही बैठे थे. And like you sit there and you think, oh God, what is this geezer on about? And he goes, he looks like a freshie, but he's got an Essex accent. What's going on there for a start? And his Punjabi's proper solid. That's what you're probably sitting there thinking. And the worst thing is this bloody little kids who are aged 11 and 12 probably want to watch EastEnders and they're forced to sit there and watch the Harjap Bhangal show. Like, and with all these guys talking about their immigration problems, about their botiyan or nothing, and they've got all that to look forward to. The worst thing is when I get a message, can you say hello to your 9-year-old kid who loves your show and watching it? Why is your 9-year-old kid watching my show?
They may well be immigrants who need your advice.
No, come on, man. Let's get out of this. Let's stop getting your kids to watch my show. Right.
Are you putting listeners and viewers off from watching your show?
It puts a bit more pressure on me because the youngsters watch it, the teenagers watch it, yeah, people like in their 40s, my age, watch it, and the elders watch it, and their grandparents watch it. So they see me as this guy who bridges all the generation gaps. So they go, I've had loads saying, Harjap, tu nahi samjhaya, nu main byaah nahi karda. The woman hasn't come in for immigration advice. She's brought her son along for me to try and tell him, look, tu byaah kar la. And I'm like, auntie, main kehnu kehna, main ta aap 88 kudiyan dekhiyan. Mainu lag gayi boti labban nu. Mainu ta aap 5 saal lag gaye. Yeah, I've become that sort of thing, that guy that gaps this sort of generation.
Do you feel like you're the modern age Cupid in that case?
No, I'm like Jerry Springer. You know, I'm the Indian Jeremy Kyle or whatever it is, like where people think appa hun ladde hain, hun hijab faisla karuga कि सही कौन है गलत कौन है. It's like a hijab stamp of approval. Oh my God, don't put this pressure on me. If you approved the photo, you had to have a mutual approval. If the photos are unapproved, they'll be posted back. Yeah? So because keda hun bar photo khichawe, it's not that Facebook.
And yet you did not get your photo back.
I didn't get one. In the end, I think they just kept it.
They framed it.
Right, so well, I don't know what they've done. Probably burnt it. And then, right, if you got past that stage, then they would have a meeting, yeah? And this meeting isn't like you'd have a date or spend an evening with each other or like you date each other for months and all that. You had a meeting around the girl's house or around the boy's house for about 20 minutes, yeah? And if you were lucky, you got to talk to them on your own. I had loads of meetings like that. And I had loads of funny sort of questions. What always sticks out is there was a girl and I said, I said, what's your ambition in life? And I thought, why did I even ask that question? And she goes, to swim with dolphins. And I just thought, well, Penny Sadi Bunny. And I said to her, and she goes, why? I said, mine's probably to eat one. And then I made my mind up, said, I'm going to say no. And she goes, okay, you can do this, Mum goes, I said, Mum, okay, remember Chiana Nona. Mum goes, ha ha.
Yeah, but translated, that sounds so different.
Lost in translation. So, and the two sisters I remember. So I remember they both sat in front of me. I was in my mum's room, and it was like mastermind. Ek swal, duja swal, tija swal. Didn't even let me get any questions in. What degree did you? Where'd you go uni? Blah blah blah. One would ask, the other one would ask. If it's rehearsed, one of them it goes how many points you got on your license? I said, do DVLH come guardian? What do you want to know? And then as I walked downstairs, I met mum in the kitchen. I said, Teni Galbani. ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਮੋਸੇ ਸਮੂਸੇ ਰੱਖਣ ਤਾਂ ਭੱਜਣ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਮੋਬਾਈਲ ਲਾ ਲੀਆਂ and I said ਆਪਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਇਹ ਤਾਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਹੀ ਮੋਬਾਈਲਾਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਫਿਰਦੀਆਂ ਆ
That is very modern.
ਪੈਂਟਾਂ ਪਾ ਕੇ it's not happening that.
Not trousers. Oh my god.
Do you know that's where it all went wrong when they walked in with trousers, wasn't it?
That was 50% of the no was there, but they had a chance to redeem themselves. But the DVLA thing,
and they pulled out their mobiles. It was too much for you.
It was too much. I couldn't handle it. So yeah, then I had 2 broken engagements as well.
Oh, good.
I was engaged to get married at a certain date. Then something happened and she backed out.
Oh no.
I think she was being forced into it. And the second one, but it wasn't me who made the decision, it was my dad. I remember, so like on Monday, one engagement had broken down. On Friday, I went out with my workmates who were all good here, and they couldn't understand the engagement broke down and all that. And I thought, well, get out of some job. And then Friday, I went out and got drunk. Saturday, I was hungover. About 10 o'clock in the morning, I had this like hand on my shoulder. It was Dad. And he goes, shave shoof kar la. And I said, kyun? He goes, aj raat shaam nu kuri dekhan jani hai gurdware. And I said, how the heck? I've only just broke up my one relationship on Monday. I'm still not over that. And like, you're saying now, you've got to see another girl. And he was like, nahi date, usi te biyah karona main. Usi date te biyah karona.
Don't want to waste the money.
What had a wedding cards printed and everything. And I said, what? He goes, card na mein aajuge, but date nahi badalni hai na. So sometimes what your parents do isn't always the best. But so then, right, I said, all right. I saw her, she seemed fine. And then I just said, yeah, there and then. Maybe because I was sort of upset about it. So on Monday, I went into work again. I said, there you go, wedding's back on. And they go, what, with the same girl? I said, no, it's been everyone. And all these Gordy are just looking at me like, this is weird. And I didn't realise from them. For me, it was just normal. Like, this is what happens in Punjabi households, man. What are you on about?
How do you think, with the way things have changed now, and going back to, and I always go back, but it's always, you've said it yourself, we're in that middle generation. How do you think it is now compared to before? Because it was easier, you had the Vajolan that was there, whereas now it's become, when I was going through it, it had become very hard, especially because divorce rates were up, and it's become a whole thing. No one wants to get involved, no one wants to become a Vajolan.
I don't think the Bajola has much say in it anyway. In them days, if things went wrong, the Bajola would come around, try and sort things out. But now people think, right, it's your own business. Why should I get involved? I'd be the same as well. You know, why should I get? I've got enough grief at home and at work without taking extra grief of another couple on. So the way I see it is like, with us, once you were married, you did your utmost best to get on with it. You had to tolerate, and the women especially, had to tolerate a lot of stuff, which now I would never tell my daughter to tolerate. So that the women were told, ਤੂੰ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਗਈ ਆ ਨਾ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਜੇ ਆਉਣਾ ਮੁੜ ਕੇ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਆਈ ਪਰ ਉੱਦਾਂ ਘਰ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਵਗੈਰਾ ਉੱਦਾਂ ਨਾ ਆਈ. That's literally slamming the door on your daughter's face and saying, you're off now, see you later, we done our bit. First of all, this house which you've grown up in, you won't have any share in it, that'll all go to the boy. I mean, how bad is that in our community? And if that happens even to this day, I see it to this day, I feel ashamed of that. I see elderly people being looked after for their daughters who look up to their own family and then still come and take time off and look after their parents, and their sons don't give two monkeys. And yet the will's on the son's name. He's going to get everything. For me, I just find that's an evil in our...
But then what can we do to change this? Because this is a massive issue in
100%.
in the community nowadays. Women are still going through it.
If my kids say, what about your property, Dad, after you die? I'm going to say, mere saleo, the property's mine. I made it. And my rule is this, main ਉਹਨੂੰ ਦਊਂਗਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਚੰਗਾ ਨਿਕਲੂਗਾ.
Yeah.
Yeah? So you both should turn out good. If you turn out bad, if there's something that doesn't fit in with my principles, then it's down to me whether I want to leave you something or not. You should be happy I'm leaving you anything at all. I've seen these arguments fold out in my office where there's 4 or 5 kids there and they start fighting over their mum and dad's inheritance. And they'll be like, well, hold on, it's not yours. It's my baba's because he gave it to you and it's his dad's and all that. And I said, yeah, you're right. He gave it to me. So it's mine. Yeah. Now it's up to me who I give it to. And if none of you are good, then I'm going to give it to charity. And I'm going to say, you can work your way up. Try not to feel we head start. You're getting an education. You get a roof over your head. Everything's paid for. And obviously, I've got to have this conversation yet with my kids because they're only 9 and 4. So I don't think a 4-year-old's going to really go, oh my God, Dad, just leave me out the wheel.
You never know. You never know.
Yeah, that conversation needs to be had. And why shouldn't it go to daughters? We are sexist as a community. We are chauvinist as a community. That's me as a male saying that.
This is really interesting because this is, again, I keep saying it's a conversation we had in a previous podcast. And sometimes the awareness needs to be there because this was a conversation I was having with Taj actually in regards to wills, and it hadn't even occurred to me.
We did. Actually.
No, we didn't. But the point I was going to make was it was that question of, oh, who would I give? And my automatic response was, oh, I'd give it to the son. And then after we had this conversation, it was like, wait a second, I need to look at myself.
You have turned into your mum and dad.
I've turned into my mum and dad, which isn't a bad thing because there's a lot. But the thing was, the other part is raising the awareness. And it was only when we had that conversation where I was like, hold on, I have said something wrong. I have looked at this completely wrong. And it was that automatic thing that I'd done, something that had happened from my parents.
Should be done on merit.
Mm.
It's like when you interview someone for a job interview, it should be done on merit. What has your son done more than your daughter to deserve you leaving everything to him and nothing to her? The Odysseus argument to that is, nahi on apne ghar chal jana, sauriyan da oda hona hai. But in fact, it ain't, because the sore leave it to their son.
Yep.
The daughter-in-law only gets it because she's married to their son. So if the daughter-in-law wasn't married to that guy, she wouldn't get anything from her own parents and she wouldn't get anything from her in-laws.
You say merit. What do you mean by merit? Do you mean who looks after you the most? Because then it's a case of, let's take a race, let's look after him. Are we doing it from the heart?
Well, do you know what? I don't care whether they do it from the heart. I don't
Just
want
look after me.
I want my breakfast in the morning, yeah. I talk about merit as in like have good principles, bring or keep respect, do good deeds, turn out to be a good person. If one kid's looking after me and the other isn't, then why shouldn't that kid get the merit for that? They both should. Madonna da daddy, right? We always say, yeah, and this is a mum's favourite dialogue, yeah. मैंने तो सारे एक को जाया तो मेरा दिल चीर के देखो सारे एक को जाया. And yet I know so many mums who've got a favourite. I've got a favourite. So I've got a favourite, and I know you can't. You're saying you can't say that. You can't say that, but I'm.
Hey, I was going to say I agree with you.
And the people who say I haven't got a favourite, they're not being honest with themselves.
No, I don't have a favourite. There's different qualities in each child, so I don't think you favour one more than the other. Harjap is like, no, that doesn't wash with me.
And it depends on the day.
Favourites switch very quickly. So, like, if your favourite kid then starts messing around and starts giving you jip, then all of a sudden the little one becomes, my favourite kid. बेचारे ने कुछ नहीं किया, गू गू गा गा करी जाता सारी दिहाड़ी है ना, कितना भी मुड़ के आए तो मुड़ के जवाब देंदी है. You know what I mean? She's giving it 10. Not having that. Dads are very attached to their daughters.
Yeah.
And mums to their sons, aren't they? And I bet when growing up, yous lot must have felt that, yeah, mum and dad have got their favourites. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. Yeah. And you're probably both sitting there and you both probably thought it was each other. Right? No?
She was granddad's favourite. I know that.
So there you go, see? So you can accuse your parents of having a favourite, but when it comes to you, you go, nahi mere to koi favourite nahi hagi, main to sare ikko jaye. Leave it. Leave it.
And it's interesting how we turn Punjabi when we're saying this, because otherwise we speak English, but when we have to have these little dialogues, then we're Punjabi all of a sudden.
All the one-liners come out. First, it's like, no, I'm not. Well, Punjabi's not really good. But you know, when you need to swear, or you need to cuss someone, or you need to gadburai out someone, you know, or you need to juggle about someone, the A1 Punjabi comes out.
Just out of interest, I'm going to change tact slightly because we've discussed quite a few things. One of the areas that I really wanted to pick your brain on, in regards to something that's coming through Parliament at the moment.
Yeah.
The National and Borders Bill.
Yeah.
Now, it's going to be debated in the House of Lords at the end of the month, which is one of the really important reasons that we wanted you to come onto this podcast to discuss.
Yeah.
Could you give us an understanding as to what this bill's about?
Okay, right. Us lot, we're all British citizens. I was born in this country before 1983. All right? Even though my parents might have been Indian, but I'm British by birth. Yeah. So I haven't lived in India. I've got an ancestral home there, but I haven't studied in India. Best I've been is holidays. India's not my home. My home is the UK. If you look at nationality-wise, we're British. What this bill does is effectively creating us two classes of citizenship. So if a white British kid is born in the same hospital ward as I am, in the same day, on the same year, yeah, but his parents are also white and British and his grandparents are also white and British, if he commits a crime and if I commit the same crime, yeah, they will not deport him, or they can't deport him back anywhere, yeah. But now with this, they can deport someone like us just because our parents were not born here. So what that means is that my citizenship isn't as strong as his, but yet I'm born in the same circumstances as he is. So this bill is going to affect about 6 million people, and majority of them people are not white. So this is why it's being called the racist bill. But what happened, essentially, it's saying is, now this clause 9, this is what's been brought in sneakily through the back door, and they're trying to bring this in, and how luckily it's been picked up on. It's saying that they can cancel your citizenship without notice. So if they want to cancel your citizenship, they have to give notice. They give you a chance to appeal in a court, all whilst you're in the UK. But you could be on holiday, and you could turn up at the airport to come back with your family, and they say, sorry, we cancelled your citizenship. And you'd effectively be left stateless. But what they're saying is, because your parents are born in India or abroad, you are eligible for another nationality. Yeah. And even though you haven't taken it or you've never held it, but that's good enough for the British government to cancel it. Now, that's fine if you're committing terrorism or you're doing naughty stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't want a terrorist living next to my home. I'm sure you just don't want it. Good if they can send him somewhere, yeah, or her somewhere. But, and this is the thing, there are some clauses in there which are very generic. So one is, if you're not conducive to the public good. There's no definition of this. What does that mean? Yeah? So if I accidentally kill someone in a road accident, will they say, sorry, you're a bad driver, you're not conducive to the public good, we don't want you in the country, we're going to send you back to India, despite my wife being born here, my kids being born here, I'm born here? Are they going to say that? Another is if you damage diplomatic relations between a country. So if I'm vocal against, say, the farmers' laws in India, or I'm against the amount of rapes that happen in India, how many thousands of rapes a day, India is pretty much the rape capital of the world. That's another topic. But if I'm against that and I say this is bad, and the Indian government think he's bad mouthing our country, and they say to the British government, we're not going to do a deal with you because this guy, we want these people back, they bad mouth our country. The British government can say, you're harming our diplomatic relations, we're taking our nationality away from you. So it's almost like saying we can't be vocal on topics. They can cancel my nationality. Therefore, that's taking my voice away. I have to now watch what I say because I've got this sword dangling over my head that my nationality might go. And then if my nationality goes, I can't see my kids again. I'm split up from my family.
If someone does become stateless, so for example, in our situation, if I was to become stateless,
well, you won't be stateless, theoretically. They would argue, but she can apply for an Indian passport because her mum and dad were born there, yeah? And I would say, well, that's not a given because there's a process for that, and she might not get accepted. So what you've done is you've made her stateless. She doesn't hold two passports. So that's the key. India doesn't let you hold dual nationality.
How does this work? Because from what I understand, I've done a bit of reading around this.
Yeah.
As part of the law, you can't actually be stateless.
That's right. Yeah, they can't make you stateless. So but the government are arguing we're not making you stateless because you're eligible for another nationality.
However, for that time period, whether they give you that status or not, you are stateless in that. Yeah. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And you have to then do an appeal outside of your country through the courts and prove that you haven't got the other nationality or you can't get it. So they'd make you apply for an Indian passport and India would probably give you it. And you got it, then your argument's defunct.
So for the everyday layman, for example, that won't go to a protest, that won't, I don't know, get into a fight, that is a professional, will it affect them? Because we might have listeners thinking, hey, I'll never get into trouble. Why does this law affect me?
Yeah, perhaps it won't. But what about if their kid does tomorrow? Yeah. What about if you accidentally get involved in something? Are you telling me there are people in jail and that everyone's guilty and there haven't been people sent to jail for crimes that they haven't done? First of all, that's the first thing. Secondly, what did the Windrush people do? They didn't do anything. They've been living here 40, 50 years. They went on holiday back to Jamaica. They wouldn't let them back. They said, sorry, mate, we don't know who you are. And they had to fight to come back in. Some of them died out there waiting to come back in. Why should we have to fight a legal battle? What this does is this gets a gun, loads it with bullets, and puts it on the table and aims it at you. And then this government is saying, don't worry, we're not going to fire it at you. This is just there on the table. Well, if you've got no intention to fire a gun, why have you loaded it? And why have you put a gun on the table pointing at me? And coincidentally, in the past, you've pointed that loaded gun and shot it at a group of immigrants, like the Jamaicans in Windrush. And now you're saying, trust us. And tomorrow, this government gets voted out and say UKIP or a far right government comes in. And they said, well, having these Asians here is not good for our public good. It's not good for the public. They have got this loaded gun, and they're going to use it. And all thanks to this. So this government might not use it, but something has been made to be used. Laws are made to be used, not stay still. Why do we even need this? Surely if I do something wrong, send me to jail here, but not afterwards say, Huntu to citizen money there. Huntu pendiya ke rahe. ਆਪਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਵੇਚ ਬੂਚ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਕਾਫੀ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਸਾਰਾ ਕੁਝ ਉੱਥੇ ਕੀ ਰਵਾਂਗੇ we don't know anything out there. We might know the lingo, but we can't make a living out there. There's no source of income out there for people like us, and that's a punishment surely to separate us from our family and our kids. That's what the Windrush people were, left in Jamaica and separated from their wives and husbands and families, and they had to fight to come back for something which was the government's fault, and they haven't even been compensated for it.
From what I understand, this law has been there, and I'm taking a quote from the Home Secretary, who probably isn't the best person to be taking a quote from here. It's been around for centuries.
Well, it's been around since the Labour government allowed to strip of people and give a right of appeal. It's what they're using on Shamima Begum at the moment as well. That's right. So that law's there, yeah? But what they're not telling you, and what the Home Secretary isn't telling you, that before 2012, this law was hardly used. But after that, since the hostile environment came in, which we often hear about, there's been hundreds of times when this law has been used.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, they don't tell you that. So under the Tory government, this has been used more than it was under any other government. And people like Dhanmanjit Singh Tessie, who's your MP probably in Slough, yeah, and people like Seema Malhotra and Preet Gill and David Lammy, they all point this out. And so it's all documented in the figures. And this is stuff what Priti Patel doesn't point out. So it is used, even in Shamima Begum's case, yeah. Bangladesh have said, we're not going to give her citizenship. We don't want her. So effectively, she is stateless, but she's stuck in a refugee camp. Now, tomorrow, if she wins her appeal, are you going to give her years back? How are we going to compensate her? She should have been here when she fought her appeal. And so people say, well, okay, she was involved in terrorism. And yeah, I agree. But so are IRA terrorists. They're involved in terrorism. They get jailed here. They haven't been told to sit in a refugee camp in Syria or the Iraq border or wherever. Have they? There are people killing their kids here. But that poor 6-year-old who was killed, Arthur, was it?
Yeah.
By his own parents, right? Why don't you send them to Rwanda?
Yeah.
Surely you don't want them people here. They're not going to get deported anywhere. So we are getting a double sentence and a threat, yeah? And we're being told, effectively, it's telling us, stay in your lane.
Why do you think this is happening now and not before?
Because it's playing up to the right-wing vote, which, as we know, is there with Brexit, the rise of UKIP, and people like Nigel Farage, who are popular for being racist, essentially. Tommy Robinson. People see him as a national hero, when really these people are anything from that. They're divisive. They're not good. They play on the fear of foreigners. Yeah, and they turn us into us and them. and hence division.
The Home Secretary, she's Asian herself. So can we say that she's being racist because she's delivering this message?
Well, ask a Muslim. A lot of the outcry against it has been from Muslims, and less from Sikhs, and hardly any from the Hindus. A lot of it from human rights agencies. So they obviously think that it's targeting them. That doesn't mean that it doesn't target us and we should be silent. If you see something bad happening against someone, it's up to us to speak out against it, because otherwise, when something happens to you, and believe me, it will happen to you, then everyone else is going to be quiet.
I mean, there was that case of the 3 Singhs in Birmingham.
They did try. So it's something that she has tried to do. The other thing is, and something which I learned recently, so she always plays this card about, oh, I came from Uganda, my parents did, and they were kicked out in 1972. Well, her dad came here in 1965. That was before Idi Amin kicked people out in 72.
Oh, that's interesting, isn't it?
Right, so anyone and a lot of Sikhs, and a lot of Punjabis, and a lot of Hindus, and a lot of Muslims, a lot of British Asians were kicked out of Uganda and other countries, and they had nowhere to go, and this country took them in. Now, if they have been through that experience. If you sit down with your parents and ask the elderly and say, what was that like? They will tell you it's horrible. They had to leave everything and come here with nothing. And that's why should we even allow there to be a situation like that where that happens? I'm born here. All right? It's my right to be here. I just like all the Gori I went to school with in my class. I should have the same rights as them. I don't need anyone, whether they're Asian background or whether they're pure white background, telling me you are not part of this country. I've lived here, pay my taxes here. Yeah, that's what entitles me to live here. And I pay my taxes. I contribute to this country probably a lot more what criminals have contributed to this country. And yet now I'm told that someone who's a criminal will have more right to be British than I have. And there's a chance that I might be sent back to India just because of my political views, or because of your political views, or because someone who's going to sit there and decide you're not good for this country. I don't even want that situation arising for me or my children, for anyone from my country, or anyone who's the same colour as me. That's why we've got to oppose this. If we let them get away with this, thinking, oh, they're just targeting a specific group and not us, when the Sui comes to us tomorrow, no one's going to speak out, and it'll be too late. Then the horse has bolted. We've got to stop this now in its tracks now.
Okay, so on that point, what is it that our listeners can do?
In this now, what we really need to do is lobby as many lords as we can. So you can write to the lords at the House of the Lords. There's an open letter that's been done as well, signed by about 150 people. And that's done. But we need to lobby the lords and say, look, you need to speak out. One of the most vocal lords against this is a white woman, Jenny Jones, from the Green Party. So she has been very vocal against it. And so she's very good. A lot of Asian lords have been silent on the issue.
Why do you think that is?
Because basically they're just stooges for this government, political parties. And so they were silent during the farming protests as well. They're silent about what's going on with the Muslims now as well. They're silent about the attacks on Christians in Karnataka as well. So they have agendas. And coincidentally, they're millionaires as well. And they're party donors. Yeah, well, you don't go speak against the party. You put your
I mean, with the petition, it was pretty easy. You got the link. You put your name on there, and that was it. It was done. How do we go about this process?
There is a letter, and it's on Twitter, and I'll try and find it and read.
That would be really good.
And
then we can put that out.
Which we've written, a lot of us collectively. So 150 organisations. It's signed by the Society of Asian Lawyers as well.
Okay.
So really good that is been done. But yeah, we need to look at that letter, and we need to write to them as well, and we need to say, right, that this is how we feel, and ਆਪਾਂ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ ਆ ਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ ਇਹ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ that we this is against it. We want the lords to speak out against it, and we don't think this is right.
And
and it isn't.
the important thing is, I mean, we will share the link as well on our accounts, but also it's not just an Asian issue. This will affect all communities.
Yeah. So, and it will affect anyone with a dual nationality, who's got, like anyone who has got a European dual nationality. So it affects a lot of them. But what it's also doing is it's affecting us born here.
Yeah.
Hannah. So I didn't migrate here. My parents did, but I didn't. Hannah. So why should I have that sort of thing about being sent back? Why should I worry about that? And that's what I think. It's a bit. That is it's just not on. I'm not having my citizenship downgraded to the second class sort of thing. And I'm not accepting that my citizenship.
And it's not only about us, it's our kids. And that's where it comes to the next generations.
But there should be more.
Yeah.
There should be more of us who've signed this.
Well, it's interesting because it was 300,000 that had done that change petition, but 300,000 is a very low number for the number of people that this will affect. And it's about
if you think the petition to overturn Brexit has about 6-7 million signatures on it,
yeah,
and that hasn't happened. The petition is not really of 300,000. It's not going to hold much weight.
Yeah.
So our only hope now is to hope that a group of lords comes together and pings this clause 9 down, and then takes it out. And because the government have already responded to the petition, and they've said, "Nah, sorry, we're going to keep it in." Yeah.
Our parents always used to say, "Oh, we should keep land back at home. We should have a house back." And we used to laugh at them, and we were like, "Yeah, okay, we're never going to get kicked out."
Yeah.
Why did they initially think that we should keep something back home?
Why do you think now? Because I used to laugh at my parents, because in one household there's always someone with an Indian passport, and you tell them to make British, and they go, "No, no, मैं तो Indian रखा है, पता नहीं इन्हें अब नहीं पता सानू कदों ਕੱਢ देन."
But why would we think that? Because why would it happen? We used to laugh at that. We all laughed at it.
As an immigration lawyer, I would laugh at that, and I think, leave it out. Like, Mum, why would you do that? And but maybe because of the experiences, but the experiences that they had when they first come here, that's molded them.
Yeah.
So they came here at a time when the BNP was on a rise, National Front was there, and these people were violent to them. They'd smash your shop, smash your home, beat you up. It wasn't like that. If you went to a football match in them days, you'd get a kicking. Yeah. So like it wasn't like it is now. They weren't allowed to play the sports. They weren't allowed to wear a turban, driving a bus. We had to fight for everything, pretty much. Yeah. So our parents, regardless of religion, but British Asians as a whole, had to fight for their rights in this country, and they earned their citizenship. But they remember the attitude that was so ingrained in British society, and that we've seen come out now. A lot of people have found their racist vocal voices due to Brexit because they think it's all right now. We voted for that. Well, you didn't vote to be racist. All you did was to vote anti-immigration. But that thinks that allows them to be racist. And that's why we haven't seen the extent of racism our parents seen, just as much as our kids won't see the extent of racism that we've seen.
But unfortunately, I think a bill like this just proves that there is underlying racism regardless of what we are seeing on the front. Would you agree to that?
And the best thing is, the British always do racism the best. They do it with a smirk and a smile and, a nice politeness. They're doing it like with British smirk. They bring in a brown face to execute it. Like we were talking about Jallianwala Bagh, weren't we? Udham Singh.
Yeah.
It wasn't Gore that shot. Apne was it? They made the Apne shoot them, who they were employed. People in the army. So we were talking about the British Empire. They always get your own to do the dirty work on you. And that's the mentality. And this is what I mean. This is that sort of regime, divide and rule. They put divisions with you. This is what is there. And I know the majority of British people don't think like that. But the British people aren't educated as to the ills of what the British Empire did and what they did. And if they did, then perhaps, or what the slave trade did. We've seen that. We've got people upset that a statue of a Bandar who used to sell kids and kill their parents and throw them off the boat has been taken down. They built a statue to him. Yeah. Like, oh my God. And we're reminded, like, oh, well, this country fought against Hitler. Yeah. Well, you've also got statues of slave traders. Churchill let 3 million Bengalis starve to death. So, well, at that time, Bangladesh was India. So they let 3 million Indians starve to death. Yeah. They presided over Jallianwala Bagh. They hung the freedom fighters. So it's all part of our history. It's not taught. You have to go and read these things, just like I did.
I think you hit the nail on the head earlier on. The thing that we have to do for our generation and the next generation is education. And that's something that no one can take away from you.
Like, my dad always said that to me. And you're talking about dads and one-liners. He always said, he goes, "But पैसे आंदे जांदे रहोगे, घर आंदे जांदे रहने हैं, सारा कुछ." There's one thing someone can't take away from you, and that's your degree.
Yeah.
That's your education. And he said that to me, and we sit there and sometimes at that time I was wondering, why did my dad push me into education? I wanted to be a teacher. I didn't want to be a thingy. I didn't want to be a lawyer. But now I realize that when you haven't got anything, yeah, and you really want it or you need it, you put a value on it.
Yeah.
For my parents, education has such a high value. ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ private tuition ਵੀ ਪੜਾਈਆਂ, and I'm sure maybe your parents probably did the same.
Yeah.
For a working class person, for a woman sitting in front of a sewing machine, earning £2 here and there on piecework, to put 1, 2, 3 children through tuitions and the best education, the best schools that they can find, just to make their life better, and themselves being uneducated, that is sacrifice. That is why when you said it earlier that we can't go in too harsh on our parents, that's something that we have to balance. This is why we are that sort of lost generation, that we are that sort of generation. We have an education, yeah. Perhaps we don't value it. If we didn't have one, then we would have. I remember one year, just before I went to uni, and I said to Dad, I don't want to study. My dad looked at me. I thought I was going to get a beating, but I didn't. My dad didn't. But so he looked at me and he got a shovel and he put it in my hand. And it's education nahi chahiye. And I went to work with him all summer. And I thought, Dad, buddy, now. I thought, yeah, I had a bit of change of heart. Yeah. So then now, education, not just as a degree or academic, life is education. Life is about growth. It's equally, we have to teach our kids about life skills, about growth, about what's right and wrong. That is an education in itself. Experience, and so that they're always growing.
We talk about education, and we know that you've worked really hard, and you talk about balancing life.
Yeah.
Do you think you balanced your life enough? Because we know that you said that you've had 2 bypasses.
Yeah.
Do you think that was because you worked too hard? And do you look back and think, hey, I wish I had done it in a different way?
One of the biggest moments of regret was, so it was on a Tuesday at a Jacket Potato in West Brom. And I always blame it on, but everyone goes, you do West Brom, no, but no, I'm got on. Right? So, right, I had a Jacket Potato there and I just felt it sit on my chest. Yeah. And so that night I came back and said, Mum, I've got this, Jacket Potato, Tajamni hoya, innit? I need a Rennie or something, yeah. And so
didn't she give you a lawn to run?
No, Mum, what's Mum's large to everything? What's Mum's large to everything? It's
Haj Mullah.
No, Jabila. Right, so Jabila. She made me some tea, and I had a cup of tea. I thought, I'll be all right. So Wednesday, I thought, you know what? I haven't been to the gym for a few weeks. This is why it is. So I got up to the gym. I ran 5K, did a sauna and a steam room. But Wednesday night, that pain sort of it wasn't a pain. It was just for indigestion. Just like gas was still there. Thursday, I do the school runs at Nishcom. So Thursday morning, as I was about to go, Mum goes, you still got that gas thing? And I said, yeah. She goes, do I hospital? Yeah. Right, this is my mum's instinct. Yeah. So this is why we can't praise mums enough. Yeah, and mums don't get the credit they deserve in that community. I'm sorry I'm saying this.
100% agree with that.
It's true.
Yeah, and guys are going to hate me for it because they're going to be listen, mate. Yeah, because they do a lot. There's a lot of sacrifice. So Mum goes, why don't you go to hospital? She goes, it's Thursday. And she goes, drop Cushy off. You can go to hospital. No one will be there. And you'll be out by about 11, 12. And I thought, yeah, all right. I dropped Cushy off. drove myself to the hospital. First time in my life, West Middlesex Hospital that I've been, and I've been loads of times, there's absolutely no one in A&E. No one, not a single bunda. So I walked in, and the woman was behind the desk, and she goes, "What's up?" I said, "Lagda gas goes to you, you know?" And she goes,
Did you say it in Punjabi?
"No," which I was thinking it, and then I had to translate it to English. That's the sort of levels I've reached in my life. So, like, my first instinct is to think and talk in Punjabi, and then I have to translate in English. There was a time when it was the other way around when I was young, but she goes, "All right," and so she took me onto this, booked me in ECG machine. She goes, "Nah, it's all fine." Like, probably a bit of gas, but she goes, "Because you've mentioned it's in your chest, we have to do your bloods." So she done my bloods, and when my bloods came back, then everything started going panic stations. 2 doctors came, they started talking to each other. Like, they mentioned the word troponin. When I heard that, I googled it. I thought, what's troponin? And it says enzyme released when your heart's under attack. I said, "Doctor, look, what's up?" And he goes, "You got something wrong with your heart." I said, "You better fix it. I've got to pick my daughter up at like 3 o'clock." And he goes, "Nah, you ain't going anywhere. We're taking you in for surgery now." And he goes,
There and then?
Yeah. And he said, "Look, you better phone who you want to phone." When he said that,
Last calls, it sounds like.
right, that's exactly how it came across. So I said, "What do you mean phone someone?" And you better phone someone. So I phoned my dad. And I said, "Here, Dan," my dad came running. I phoned my wife. She popped down. My kid was only 1 then. Mum had to stay home with Summers, right? So she was with him. Or she would have come down. Then I thought, I need to speak to Mum. So I WhatsApp called her. And that's the hardest conversation I've ever had because I couldn't get a word out. I was trying to talk to her, but I just started crying and she started crying. And we spent about 5-10 minutes not saying anything. And then I just put the phone down. And then, so I couldn't tell her what had happened and everything. Obviously, Dad had told her. And then when they were wheeling me in, every single day's worries became zero. So all about my clients, my office, my cars, my watches, my bank balances, my mortgages, my houses, whatever, yeah, all became zero. A year before that, I had one of my friends passed away, DJ GURPS, and I went to his funeral, and I think that had a profound impact on me. And when they were knocking me out to do the surgery, I swear to God, I had a vision, and I'm the last one to believe in this sort of stuff. I had this vision of his funeral, but instead of him in the coffin, it was me, and it was my wife and my kids all dressed in black crying. And at that time, all I said was, "Rabba mainu kal da suraj dikhal de. I just want to see sunlight tomorrow." And that was it. That was all that I was. And all I thought was, am I going to see my kids again? Yeah. And that's it. They took me and then knocked me out. I woke up and I was in immense pain, but I was on morphine as well. But yeah, God. But they said, yeah, it was we had to do a double bypass. And I woke up and I thought, because they take the nard out of your leg, don't they? For a bypass, right? So look at this. God, yeah, or whoever made the body, has put some spare tubing arteries in your leg. It has no function. It's just a spare, like you got a spare wheel. Yeah? That's what it is, yeah? And so when I woke up, there was no cut on my leg. I said, hold on, there's no cut on my leg. Where is my cut on my leg? You know? And he goes, well, we were going to cut your leg open, but when we cut your chest open, there were some spare arteries in there. So we thought,
around.
Yeah, so he goes, what? He got us, what? And he goes, yeah. So we thought, well, why do we have to cut his leg open? We've got something. So he goes, and he goes, I just shoved it in there. And what they do, and I said, well, what did you actually do? He goes, we sawed through your breastplate, yeah? Sawed through your shakti. He goes, we put you on life support, yeah? We take your heart out, yeah? We fiddle about with the nara in it. We put it back in, we sew you up, and then we jumpstart you. And I said, what? And he goes, yeah. I said, I'm glad I don't want to see what happened to me there and all of that. But yeah, I mean, so lucky. And Kudarti, Thursdays is a day when the cardiac team and the heart team are in West Middlesex. Otherwise, they would have had to take me to Hammersmith.
Oh, good.
I
Good day
remember
you picked.
the doctor told me, he goes, "You've been having this for 2 days, this heart attack." And he goes, "If you hadn't come in the next 12 hours, you would have been collapsed somewhere." And he
Wow.
literally basically said, "You would have been dead there." You know, when you hear about banda deg paya mar gaya or
Yeah, yeah.
that's what would happen. So I said, "Well, mum's instinct." And she goes, "But the hospital jaya." I was going to go Hounslow that day, drop Cushy off, do my little Hounslow runs, missions, do a bit of shopping around, but it wasn't meant to be. So
Just out of interest, from that experience, has have you changed anything in your life, or has it made you think differently?
do you know what? I'd like to say yes for the first year. So I was for बहुत अकल आ गई सी, बहुत अकल आ गई सी. And for the first 2 lockdowns as well, I was really good. But since last year, like this lockdown, like the last one, I've gone back into my old habits. I've put a bit of weight on. So this year, and in fact today, I just thought, you know what, Harjap, you've got to sort yourself out because you've got to live longer for your kids. Because it took us a long time to have kids, and we went through, it's quite well documented. I'm quite vocal about it as well, and I talk quite open about it. We had a lot of miscarriages. We were told we couldn't have kids.
Wow.
So I'm actually got married in 2003, and we didn't have kids till 2012. So we had a lot of miscarriages. We couldn't conceive, and yet when we were giving up, and I was thinking of perhaps adopting, and then my wife conceived, and then even after that, when we went for our second kid, then it was just miscarriage. We had 3 miscarriages in 18 months. So it was. I always say, and we had a stigma,
I was
and there
just
was
going
a
to
stigma in our community.
say.
I remember I stopped going to weddings because when we went to weddings, everyone looked at us, "Why haven't you got kids?" And they wouldn't let us pick. They would be very hesitant about my wife picking up their kid because they think she was cursed. They think we were cursed. I'm like, and like we didn't know what to do and with kids and stuff like that. So it really used to leave us upset. So I didn't want to like. I thought, yeah, panjana hi nahi hum log ka to ki lena. And our community was really shitty like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure on women, especially in case of miscarriages. Women don't tell anyone because they don't want that, because it is a taboo subject. I
Women
mean,
get blamed.
yeah, they get blamed for a lot of things.
Yeah, well, pretty much everything in the
Yeah,
Punjabi household. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
even for being born, and that's
I,
another cause that that I openly support. Unique Home for Girls, and where uh, female feticide,
yeah.
and female, where they kill young kids, young girls when they're born.
How did you as a couple support each other? Because obviously you were going through such a tough time. The community was putting all this pressure on you, and like you said, you didn't go to weddings. How did you support each other getting through that difficult period in your life?
I think, like with all arranged marriages, yeah, that happened during our days. You just learn to get on with it, and you just learn to deal with it. It's not. I wish I'd been there to support my wife a lot more than what I was, yeah. But and I wish I'd had some support. But how do you support each other through times like this? You don't know what to do when it's 24/7 in your face. Everyone's with their families and their kids, and you're just stuck on your own. And I was just with my parents. I wish I'd been a better husband, and I'm being honest about that. But I just threw myself into my work. Um, some days I'd have a drink, and I'd have a drink after hours. Then I'd be, on every Friday pretty much. So I'd do that. I'd be useless on a Saturday, but just to try and block out all the fears and block out all the galah and all the negative thoughts. It takes you to a real dark place, and I can only say that God took me out of that. God took me out of that. And I don't even think he did it for me, because I probably didn't deserve it. But I think he done it for my wife, because she didn't deserve what was happening and what she was going through. And, je Rab ne meri nahi suni, but meri wife di sun li. That was, and she's a very religious person. She's the exact sort of opposite of me. I'm a very public person. She's not even on social media. A lot of people don't even know who my wife is.
I did look through your Instagram, to be honest, to find a
Yeah.
picture. To be honest.
Well, we have an agreement
Mm.
that, so we straight away that she goes, "You're not putting any photos of me up or my kids up." She goes, "I see what you do. You put your photo up on Instagram, and I see what happens when you're at concerts or weddings. Everyone wants to be with you, wants to take a photo of you, constantly harass you. You're checking your phone every 2 minutes. you know, with what's going on. She goes, why do I want that burden on my kids? And why do I want that? And that's why I don't put my kids on social media and I don't let them be on there. I know what social media is. I know the goods of it and I know the evils of it. Yeah. And I want to keep my kids away from that until they're mentally ready to deal with it. I see a lot of kids on social media. I personally am not comfortable with that idea of putting your kids on social media at this young an age, at the age of 6, 7. They don't even know what they're doing. People are doing it for likes and like, that's my personal view. Anyone who does it, good luck to them. But I don't think a kid needs that pressure at this an age where he's being, how many likes have I got, mum? Or how many likes have I got, dad? You know, so you're not mentally prepared for rejection, you know, because what's the opposite of likes? Is dislikes. Are you mentally prepared for the comments that people leave on the videos? It's not, why would you even expose your kid at that sort of age to that? So that's why you won't find any. For actually, it's funny, if you Google Harjap Bhangal's wife, about 4 different photos come up, and none of them are my wife, and they're other people's
I'm
wives.
gonna look. I'm gonna look.
Seriously, one comes up with Jasmine Walia, and like Jasmine Walia from the Only Way Essex comes up.
I was going to say it's
Someone
one of the
says,
88.
is that your wife? And I'm like, oh, I wish.
Just out of interest, because you are very vocal on a number of issues. One of the things that you are vocal on is mental health, men's mental health.
Yeah.
How do you think in the Asian community it has been dealt with, and now, as we are in 2022, it is being dealt with?
There is a bit of awareness, but it's not as, you know, it's not as it should be. First of all, there's no understanding. When guys get together, and I know, because all I do is get together with guys ever since my uni days, yeah, it's always the Punjabi conversation is, Banda ban, you're a mard. And we're very, as Punjabis, as Asians, we're very masculine, you know, sort of like it's a very male dominated, you know, be a man about it. You don't tell anyone your problems. You've got broad shoulders. You're supposed to take it, you suck it in, and you suck it up. No one teaches you how to deal with problems. No one teaches you how to deal with when you start to question yourself. No one teaches you how to get out of dark places. It's not something that's spoke about. If there's something going on and there's a problem, well, you're told, well, Flana's doing it all right. He does 2 jobs and he brings up his kids and blah, blah. And you know what it's like. So if you have a moan one day about the housework, you'll be told, and I'm sure your husband's told you this, well, Flani the single mother ਆ 2 ਨਿਆਣੇ ਵੀ ਕਰਦੀ ਆ ਸਕੂਲੇ ਵੀ ਛੱਡਦੀ ਆ ਜੌਬ ਵੀ ਕਰਦੀ ਆ 2 ਤੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਬੇਲੀ ਆ ਘਰ ਬੈਠੀ ਨੂੰ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਫੇਰ ਵੀ ਤੰਗੀ ਲੱਗੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ. But yeah, so a lot of housewives get that thrown in their face, and like that people think that being a housewife isn't a job. In our community, they think, right,
Yeah.
it isn't a job. I mean, beli baithi rehndi ya, natak dekhdi rehndi, Star Plus wale drama and all that, yeah. So that's what they think. And like with men's mental health, it's the same thing. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves as guys, and there's no one to talk to. There's no help. There is no sort of mental health help in Asian communities. Who is it? We're told, ਘਰ ਦੀ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਘਰ 'ਚ ਰੱਖੀ ਦੀਆਂ, ਪਰਦਾ ਪਾਈ ਦੀਆਂ, ਬਾਹਰ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਨਾ ਲੱਗੇ, yeah, ਨਜ਼ਰ ਲੱਗ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਆ, and all of this sort of stuff, yeah. No one can help. If you don't cry out for help or reach out, no one's there to take your hand. And what happens is these thoughts and insecurities grow in your mind, and the pressure happens to so much that you do begin thinking bad thoughts. I've had guys reach out to me a lot ever since they saw my video of this. Is why I did the video when I was on a hospital bed and I'd had my heart attack. The first thing I thought is, I've got to do this. This is on my brain. I've got to get this message out there. Someone else might be think they're walking around with gas and they might be dying out there, you know? And so this is what, and people said, look, I said, I'm not afraid to share my feelings, and I'm not afraid to share what happened with their miscarriages. I'm not afraid to share that. I'm not afraid anymore. And that's the key. That's the key to mental health. Don't be afraid. Go and reach out. Who am I going to be afraid of? Why do I want to be afraid of people, of our own community? Every house has got its own problem. Who are they to judge me? Yeah? Only God sits that high. So I don't let fear of what people think. And I've always been like that. I've never cared about what people thought. And hence you can see all my clips and my TV shows. I'm known as a guy who says it as he is. He's very blatant. He's savage. He's rude and all that. Well, tough. That's the way I am. If speaking the truth and getting it all out there and raising awareness is for you savage or rude, then forget it. Appa rudi khosha. I'm happy at that. What I don't do is hide from myself. I don't look anything from anybody. Yeah, I have no need to hide anything my experience is. We're only here in this one life. Yeah. Why do I want to hide anything? Like I said, if anyone wants, no one has that experience. When you're on that deathbed and you're, say, what, half an hour away from dying or 15 minutes away from how, what matters to you? Nothing. Law does not matter. Nothing matters. And that's it. Well, that is the true value of your life. The thing that you're worrying about at that time, that's the true value of your life. And for me, it was just my family.
But as human beings, you said that for a couple of years you've done okay, and now you're kind of back
Yeah.
to where you were.
Yeah, I'm really
We
unhappy about
forget.
it.
We forget as human beings
Yeah,
that we went through that process, isn't it?
that's because we start feeling better. So
That's
we
it.
start feeling better and we start thinking, "Mainu thodi hona, mainu to hone ek kori ho gaya." Health is something you need to really worry about, and I neglected it my whole life. And I'm glad I'm having this now because I was just about to eat a biscuit and on a honni makana. Chuck a bench marna. And that's like, and I was thinking about that. I was thinking of being a little bit naughty today, but no. So you're right. We do forget about it because we get comfortable again. We go into our comfort zone again, and that comfortable changes our priorities. I try and keep it less of a rat race. I take my days off in between. I try and spend time with my kids. The biggest status I see on Facebook, and this is where social media is such a tool for learning of people. It's the one that always gets me. Is the one, oh, my mum and dad passed away, and then a year later, I wish I'd spent more time with my mum and
Yeah.
dad. I wish I'd spent more time with Flana Flana. I wish I'd spent more time. I promised myself, yeah, that I will never be the one writing that status because I want to spend time with my mum and dad. I still live with my mum and dad, so I try and spend time with them. I want to spend time with my kids, yeah, and I don't want my kids writing that status of, oh, dad left too early. When I ask people, I said, what would you do for your kids? Yeah, people say, I'd die for my kids. I'd take a bullet for my kids. I don't want to die for my kids. I want to live for my kids.
Yeah.
So we need to start looking after ourselves, and that's physically and mentally. So much. You're asking, do you regret it? 100% I regret it. I regret that I ended up in that hospital bed. I regretted that I spent 20 years neglecting my health when I could have looked after it. I regret putting on weight. Yeah. I regret putting on weight in the last 6 months now. That's my latest regret. So in the next 6 months, I've got to try and spend losing it. And it hurts. It's not easy because you get back into your own old habits. And remember, these habits took us 30 years or 35 years to form. They're not going to go in 35 minutes. We'll be lucky to get rid of them by the time we're 60. But we've got to make a start. We've got to make a start.
And on that point, Harjap, you have been an absolute pleasure. Tell me, last line, what have you learnt in the last 21 years of your life?
God, I've learnt so much, man.
And what are you going to teach your kids and the next generation that you want to pass on to our listeners?
I've learnt the answer to everything is education. Life is about growth. If you, in your 40s, still think the way you did when you was 21, there's a serious problem. You should be growing and you should be expanding your thinking. Your thoughts should not be the same, and you should not have the same thoughts what you did when you're the age of 21 because you haven't grown. So it's all about growth. Life is about growing as an individual, growing as a person, growing in your thoughts. Yeah. When you're wrong, admit you're wrong. Learn something. Everyone has something to teach you. Yeah. I've learned a bit of stuff from yourselves today. So I'll take that away and I add that to my teaching materials, and then I'll pass that on to someone else. So, and if we all just listened and helped each other instead of judging each other, we'd probably get a long way than what we're getting at the moment. And the thing is, as a community, we have got such a long way to go. But that doesn't mean that the people that do good, you try and pull them down or stop them or discourage them. Yeah, we just need a lot more people out there in numbers doing a lot more good. That's all. And this is a start. And like I said, our community has been like this for thousands of years. Yeah, it's not going to happen overnight. We'll be lucky if in the next 100 odd years we make progress. But at least we're getting somewhere rather than nowhere. And I think this is what podcasts like this do. This is why it's important. What you're doing is what you're doing. Whether one person listens to it, whether a million people listen to it, it's not about for likes. It's not about for listenerships. Yeah, what you've done to someone who's listening to this right now is probably educated them, and you've given them something to take away from here. That is essential. That is essential for what people like you yourselves are doing, and it's great that you're doing that. You probably learn so much off every single guest, and I'd love to listen to what other people say. And the other thing is, what you're doing, and you probably don't know it, is you're still studying, and you're thinking, well, what am I studying? You're studying people. Oh yeah, what you're doing, every guest that comes along, you study them. So that's what I do. I study people. So I study yourselves, and I study every single client that comes in, and I see, right, what have they gained in life? What can I take away and add to my life? How can their lives improve? And I just pass on my knowledge. Some people have got all this wealth of knowledge and they just keep it with themselves and it dies with them. I just want to share all my knowledge before I die. Let everyone use it which way they want it. But that's what education is about. That's what you're doing by this podcast. You're educating. You're not doing it for yourself. What you're doing is because there's something in you that thinks, right, we need to get this message out to the community. You know it. You know it. All these questions you ask me, yeah, then you're not asking me because you don't know the answers. You are like vakils. Guess what we're taught? As a vakil, guess what you're taught? In court, never ask a question you don't know the answer to. That's what we're taught. You know the answers to your questions, but your listeners might not do. And you want them answers to get out there. You know everything I said, we've got a problem with it. Whether it's the sexism, the casteism, our judgment, us being snobs, our health, drug, alcohol abuse, our lack of mental health awareness. We've got problems with all of that. You also know a lot needs to be done. Yeah. But we need to make sure that everyone listening knows that as well, that there's a problem, and evaluates themselves and looks at their lives. And just like me and you, after we've said something dissy to our kids, and 5 minutes later we think, damn, I'm beginning to sound like my dad, I shouldn't have said that, that was wrong. And let's hope other people start doing that as well. And let's just be less divisive. Why are we being so exclusive when we can be inclusive? Yeah, we all bleed the same color. No one put a stamp on us before we came here that you're this religion, you're this, and you're that. We look at that and we think, God, these people, supermen or superhuman, or this woman, or, they go through the same stuff as us. They eat the same stuff as us. They go to the toilet the same way we do. They're on the operating table the same way we are. And on that operating table, that's your true value. I'll leave you with one line you wanted to say, yeah? Right, so one line, Bob Marley said this, yeah? He said, some people are so poor, all they have is money. And that is a thought. That gets me thinking. Some people are so poor, all they've got is money. And that's it. And like I said, that when you're on your operating table, my money was useless. If someone had said to me, give me 8 million quid and I'll give you life, no one could have given me life there. That was just, I was going to live or die scenario. I owe it all to them doctors. And I owe it to someone I don't believe in, or started believing in a little bit more, but I'm too skeptical. I'm too much of a realist as opposed to an optimist. So when people say, are you an optimist or a pessimist? I say I'm a realist. So
and we all know that means a pessimist. I get that all the time.
Negative.
Yes. I was going to say we've got the one-liners too.
Yeah. So that's it really. That's from my life. That's all I can say. Growth, value, real value of what's life, education. Everything else then will fall into place. It's not about reaching certain targets and goals and all that. It's about happiness. मैं गरीब बंदे भी देखे हैं जो कि बहुत हैप्पी है मैं अमीर बंदे भी देखे थे पिट पिट के रोंदे हैं मेरे ऑफिस दे विच.
And on that point, Harjap, it has been a complete pleasure. I have learned so much from yourself, and I have laughed a lot today, so I do appreciate that. It's always been a good day when I've had a good laugh.
Yeah, what's a conversation with me if you can't laugh in it? I think everyone's expecting a laugh, and I hope I've lived up to that.
You really have. So thank you very much for that. Goodbye from me.
And that's goodbye from me.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, changing_suits, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.